welcome to Fire Headlines, where we discuss the hottest topics in fire service news. I'm your host, Samantha Didion, and joining me on the panel is Chief Kehmna. Our topic today is animal rescue equipment. Colorado Springs Fire Department is enhancing its pet rescue efforts with new emergency pet kits designed to improve the pet's chances of survival in emergency situations. Ken, what are your thoughts on this new pet kit and how it's adapting to the growing need for pet rescue equipment?
My reaction, bravo. Absolutely bravo.
Mine too.
Yeah. And it's not just because I'm a total pet nerd, a dog lover, the whole, it's not even just because of that. I've had enough experience with this for a long time to kind of formulate a fairly strong opinion about what I think about this. It's absolutely the right thing to do. There's no question about it. The amount of money that people spend on their pets now, by comparison to when I was a kid, very, very different. Pets occupy a completely different space in people's lives than they ever did before. In fact, it won't be long before we eradicate the term pet because they're family members, for a lot of us.
They're fur babies now, right?
They're fur babies. I have fur grandbabies, right? Yeah, they occupy a different place. So I think for the fire service, from a visual aspect, for us to recognize that as something important to the community, there's that. I say bravo because the likelihood that you're going to experience a pet emergency in the course of your normal daily work is almost guaranteed. Over the course of my career, plenty of times we've had pets that have needed resuscitation or weren't able to be resuscitated, unfortunately, but we've had plenty of opportunities to step in here. So we have the training, I'll say, enough to do something rather than nothing. So I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
As a pet lover, this story brings a smile to my face to hear that, other people care as much as you do about your pet, that they're carrying emergency equipment just to save my dog or my horse or, whatever the case may be. So it definitely brings a smile to my face. What are some situations that you have been in during your career that this could have really come in handy?
It may seem funny to say. You ever seen the movie Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure?
I've heard of it for sure, but no,
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
You are young. A lot of our listeners who are my age will have seen Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. He's deathly afraid of snakes, but as he's riding his bicycle through town, he sees a fire. It's the pet store that's on fire, and immediately he starts running in to rescue all of the pets. And at some point, he comes out with the very last animal, and it's snakes, and he's terrified of snakes, but he has to save them. That was the fire we went to many, many, many years ago. I was a young firefighter, and we actually had a pet store fire. And so we were carrying out fish tanks, we were carrying out all the animals. It was quite a scene. It was quite a scene.
What do you do with them all? I'm picturing immediately an aquarium sitting on the sidewalk.
Exactly. That was exactly the question. What do you do with them? We're talking many, many years ago. I'm struggling to even remember how we dealt with all of it, but everything, whether it was, puppies or fish or birds or whatever the case may be, just obviously getting them out of the fire was the main priority. What you do then, that was like, okay. We've certainly had, animals in homes that have had fires. We've had animals in homes where somebody had a medical emergency and they had to be cared for because the person could no longer take care of them. We have had large animal rescues. You name it, it literally run the gamut. We've honestly seen it all.
So these are pets that you can carry, obviously. What do you do in a scenario where, say, a barn catches on fire and you have all these horses or, larger farm animals? What does the scene look like in that scenario?
Livestock, farm animals, horses present an entirely different kind of challenge, and not just because of their size. Their size certainly presents a challenge if you're just trying to get them out of harm's way. To use the example of a barn fire, one is being able to get them out of there. That's first and foremost. But then obviously being able to care for them, corral them in some way. I've been, I guess, a little bit blessed that I've always been around people that I've worked with that have had livestock or had horses or had something. So you've got that kind of somebody who kind of knows what they're doing, because you really do have to know what you're doing around some of these animals. You can get injured pretty easily. Carrying medical equipment on the engines, masks and bowls and the kinds of things to resuscitate, small pets. I think we can all get our heads wrapped around that. That makes sense. In my career, we actually moved beyond that to carry oxygen masks for large animals, and even went to the extent that we provided training for our technical rescue teams for large animal rescue. You think about something as sort of comical as a horse in a swimming pool, a dry swimming pool, let's just say. Well, you don't just hop into the pool and walk a horse out of a pool. You have to be very mindful of how you do that, or a horse, stuck in the mud or in a ditch or something like that. Many, many times over the course of my career, we have had those scenarios. And so we've now begun providing large animal rescue training, which is an entire skill set all by itself. The equipment is specialized, how you deal with the animal is specialized, how you do it, how you rescue an animal that can quite seriously injure or kill you very easily with one swift kick. All of those dynamics you have to be mindful of. But a horse is no less a family member than the dog. Cattle, you name it. I think we know. We see people with, we call them pasture pets up here in the Pacific Northwest. We see a lot of people with pasture pets. So that they're not necessarily livestock like they're not raising it for beef or anything. So, they're family friends. So you have to do what you can to rescue them.
What does the training for these kinds of scenarios look like? Is it
Well, fortunately, there's groups of people, oftentimes with a lot of vet techs, veterinarians. The equine community is absolutely hardcore when it comes to making sure that they're doing everything that they can to help facilitate this kinds of training, getting this kind of equipment, all that kind of stuff. So that group has been very, very energized around trying to make sure that first responders in their area have the equipment and the training that they need. In the area that I worked in the Bay Area, it was it was the local equine community who helped us get the equipment and help provide the training for our technical rescue team. And you think about, it's kind of this combination of, it's technical rescue, but with a living thing. So you've got a substantial amount of weight, it's awkward, you've got to move it, you've got to, all that kind of stuff. And it has to be very carefully approached to do it safely, to not injure the animal and not injure anybody else. And so we would put these training classes on and we would practice. Funny, just like we train for human patients, there are mannequins. And we train on large animal mannequins, whether they're cattle or horses. We got more calls, not kidding, we got more calls because in between training sessions, they left the horse mannequin laying out in the field. People freaked out. They thought there was a dead horse in the field. It's like, okay, guys can't leave the mannequin just laying out in the field. You got to bring it in. You can't just leave it out there.
Yeah, like people are sensitive to other people, but people can sometimes be even more sensitive to animals.
Yeah, only 1 in 10 people calls if it's a person, right?
Yeah, you'll have at least 50% calling you if they think it's a pet. Exactly. I remember during my time in the news, I was covering the Bootleg Fire happening in Oregon. This is a little bit different. This isn't equipment wise. This is evacuation, is what I'm talking about now. But I remember driving past this giant field of all this cattle, and I'm like, they're not that far from the Bootleg Fire. What will happen if the fire were to reach here? Like, how does the fire service help with evacuations in large scale incidences, or is it calling your local partners?
Combination of things. The movement and management of livestock or large animals is, as I said, it's a unique thing, right? When you have a vegetation fire, especially, and Oregon's a great example of this. Harney County, Oregon, which is just east of us, had a very significant wildfire this year. And we had been working with them on their evacuation management planning just before the fire season hit. And I can remember talking to the emergency manager and one of the firefighters from BLM, one of the zones that they had established. And I said, I would imagine that there's more cattle than people in this particular evacuation zone. And so we started having discussion about, okay, if you actually had to evacuate that, I would imagine a very concerted effort would be in play to move that livestock to a safe place, to try and, if you can't trailer them somewhere, you would open fences and move them to another area. What that requires us to do as first responders is to be to be diligent about working with the communities that we serve and making sure that our equine community who are absolutely going to circle the wagons when they have a vegetation fire, and they're going to show up with trailers, they're going to expect to pick up animals, and they're going to expect to get them out of harm's way. Working with them ahead of time to make sure that you have good communications with them and that you can coordinate with them and that they know that you're actually going to integrate them into getting those animals out of there is key. Because if you don't, they will self-deploy, and you got to be mindful of that. And it's part of what I was sort of leading to earlier on in the call, the whole concept of pets and pet rescue or pet care. If I didn't acknowledge the need to do that, and if I didn't engage in that kind of rescue, and if I didn't do that, I run the risk of somebody putting themselves in harm's way to do that rescue, right? And then what have I done? So for me, it makes sense for me to do the rescue, at least facilitate the rescue and coordinate with appropriate resources, because I wouldn't want somebody else to get injured or put themselves in harm's way unnecessarily, knowing that we could have made a difference.
My time at my previous fire department that I started working at right after the Alameda Fire that happened in Southern Oregon in September of 2020.
I know the Alameda Fire very well.
Yeah, I was a reporter during that time. And then by the time the Alameda Fire anniversary came around, I was working at the local fire department. And I remember being in the bays one day, and one of our walls was nothing but pet carriers. They kept some of them for future emergencies. And then they also donated a lot of them to the shelters and stuff like that nearby.
Out of sight, out of mind things, right? You don't really think about it. You think fire, notify, evacuate, put fire out, everything's great. It's like, yeah, there's a lot more to it. I mean, there's a lot of nuances to evacuating a community. There's a lot of nuances, how you sort of put that community back together. Getting people, if they can come back, reuniting them with their animal, and all of that can be logistically very, very difficult. I think if most people could see the logistical support necessary to really manage an evacuation of a small community and their pets. And you say pet and you think, yeah, sure, dogs, cats makes total sense. That's just two. Dogs, cats, name anything else you want. You know, like you said, snakes, chicken, fish, it's all kinds of different things. So being able to properly adjust to that can be a significant challenge. It really does require, a concerted and community effort to make that happen.
Absolutely. And, like we said, it's not something you necessarily always think about until you're in the situation. And that's why we're having this conversation today. This situation isn't going on currently that we know of, but now we're bringing it to the forefront of people's minds. And hopefully they can walk away saying, do we have pet carriers if, something like this happens? But what advice would you offer to fire departments looking to implement similar pet rescue programs in their own communities?
I would say engage with the animal community, because I guarantee you, wherever you are, there is a group in your community either already teed up to do this or interested in wanting to do this. Engage with them. I mean, I think as I get older, and maybe it is a product of getting older, I learn to appreciate the value of the love and support that you get from your animals, right? We see emotional support pets now more than we ever did before. The fire service has certainly embraced the emotional support that animals can provide. I follow several of them on Instagram because they're cool. And I've had them actually come to the incident base when I had been there. Those groups are absolute resources for you and your organization to tie in with and put together a program for your organization. It is the right thing to do. It is low cost. It is an easy thing to do, but it is a win all the way around. There's just no downside to it, I mean, that I can see.
Mhm. And from my experience, pet lovers in my opinion, are extremely passionate people. I'm saying this as a pet lover myself. And so for any fire service leader who's like, we really don't have, the resources or the people to, take on this particular project, you might be surprised. Maybe you have a really passionate firefighter, admin staff, or even a volunteer who's like, I'll reach out to our local pet community. I'll get a game plan figured out and I'll bring it back to you. You don't know until you ask, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good way to put it, Samantha. You really don't know until you ask. I mean, having run an organization, I can tell you it's easy to be, no is always an easy answer because it's like, I don't have the time. I'm busy. I'm freaking out about something else over here. This is one of those things you go, you know what? I think I should listen to this. You're probably right. It's probably not that big of a lift. And the win is huge. The win is absolutely huge.
Yeah. And if you're a listener who is really passionate about this and you know that your leaders have a lot on their plate, maybe just take initiative, get a game plan rolling, and then when your leaders have time, show it to them. And they might be like, "Oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah. Keep trucking along. That's awesome." And that can apply to so many things, whether like car seat safety, like it doesn't have to be animals. Just think about what you're passionate about and how that can benefit your community, bring it to your leaders, and you might be surprised with what it can grow into.
Absolutely. All the best ideas come from the firehouse. That's what I'm convinced.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add on this topic?
Thanks for bringing it up. It's funny when you brought this one up, I was sort of thinking back. I have so many just wonderful memories and just great things to think about, that calls that I've been on and opportunities to be there in that moment. And it's just this is why, right? It just puts a smile on your face to think about it. It's yeah, so thanks for bringing it up. It's just a great topic.
Of course. Thank you for talking about this with me today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. As always, a link to the article we discussed can be found in the show notes of this episode. If you have a question for the panel, please reach out to us at fireheadlines@wfca.com and let us know what's on your mind. We'll see you back here next week for more Fire Headlines.